Hi, I'm Jenn.
Hello, I'm Doug, and welcome to the Krewe of Japan podcast. Welcome back. Today's topic is the first of multiple episodes on teaching English in Japan. Many people who aspire to teach English in an immersive environment in Japan tend to think that the JET program is the only and best option. However, there are other avenues that you can take in order to teach English in Japan outside of JET. We'll have two special guests on our show today that are going to provide their own unique perspectives on English teaching and education in Japan. John Loynes is a British former JET turned Eikaiwa entrepreneur, living in Iwaki City, Fukushima Prefecture for over 20 years now. Bradley Trenery is an Australian living in Japan for over 15 years as a native English instructor, privately contracted directly to a private high school in Fukushima. Through their experiences and stories, the goal of this episode is to share some perspective and some opportunities for you to explore other English teaching avenues that maybe you didn't think about. Okay, so before we hop into our interviews with John and Brad, let's take a moment and just look at the different types of English teaching opportunities that are available for employment in Japan. The first, as I mentioned, is JET. Everyone knows JET program. Maybe not everyone, but anyone that's interested in looking into teaching English in Japan knows that the JET program is out there. Jennifer, are you familiar with the JET program?
Yeah, I am. I actually considered applying for JET myself in the past, just it wasn't in the cards during that time. And now my life has, taken so many directions that I wasn't expecting that it's kind of a little not in the cards anymore. But it's something that I really wanted to do. Just because it always seemed like a good idea. And something unique about the JET program that a lot of people may not realize is that it's government run. It's not like a private organization. It's not like anything like that. It's run by the Japanese government. So it's a really good opportunity, but it can be very competitive. At least that's what I've heard, Doug. I mean, what?
Yeah, it's definitely competitive. We're gonna have a whole episode, at least one, maybe two. There's so many. As a former JET, I have a lot of other folks that I know across the world, in the U.S., wherever, that can really speak to some of those opportunities. And as we approach, closer to the application deadlines and stuff that are going to come up in the fall, we may do some other, episodes where we kind of highlight that. However, today we're just going to keep it a little high level, but yeah, it's definitely competitive. I know it depends on which consulate you apply through. Um, how many people are applying that year, how many people are not contracting or recontracting in Japan. That's also the thing too. If there's not as big of a demand, then they're not going to be accepting as many applicants, but no one knows that going in. So yeah, it's definitely a great opportunity, but very competitive. But it's good. I would, like I said, a lot of people consider it the best option out there. There are other options that are available, but I think that's, as going over as a government employee, you get a lot of perks that come along with just the program itself.
Yeah. But Doug, I know we're talking about Jed, and hopefully we will get its own separate episode because it definitely deserves. But
Yeah.
what other kind of jobs can people, find for English teaching in Japan?
There are similar private firms that will help contract or staff schools with teachers. Some of these private firms, some of the most well known are Interact, which is pretty much they do the same thing as JET in terms of staffing. They're staffing schools. It could be kindergarten, could be elementary, junior high, senior high. They do have other programs though. One that I wasn't really familiar with until I did some research, called Westgate, which is essentially a university JET program almost. And I say JET program just in that you're teaching in a university setting as a professor. There are some qualifications that are different from uh, from Interact or from JET, that you may need to have. I can't remember exactly, but some of these do require a college degree. Some require some ESL training or experience in the classroom. So some of these are options that do have some prerequisites that you may need to meet. A couple other ones that I discovered when doing some research as well. They have something called JACPA. It was JACPA Japan, and that's exclusively for kindergartens, only kindergarten. So you're kind of the English teacher in a kindergarten setting to introduce kids to English. And then there are what they call ECC schools, which are essentially immersion English schools, where they're looking for someone essentially that can speak fluent English. And you may not be only teaching English, you may be teaching other things. But so you need a degree, I believe, in education, but maybe not exclusively education. It could be some other areas depending on what you would be teaching. Have you heard of any of those before?
Um, I've heard of Interact. I actually had a friend who applied for Interact because I think their job was like easier to apply for than some other ones that he was looking at. I'm not exactly sure, but it really looks like a lot of people not only need to consider the prerequisites that these jobs may require, but also what kind of teaching you'll be doing. It seems like the levels, the grade levels, you could be teaching, toddlers to high school to college. So you really need to
Yeah.
really determine, what company or what program is really a right fit for you regarding, your comfort like how comfortable you are with interacting with students.
Yeah, I would agree there because I when I did JET, I said I was okay teaching elementary school, and then that's where I ended up getting placed. But in my mind, I really wanted to do like junior high or senior high. But in hindsight, I'm very happy that I did elementary school. It was very laid back. So there are, you kind of need to know yourself and what your preferences are when looking to apply for these. If you don't have a preference, then yeah, Interact is definitely one of those ones that has a lot of different age ranges where you could teach. You may want to consider some, doing reviews and feedback on websites that are out there. We'll touch on a few of them later on that give some reviews. You also want to look at the salary ranges and the housing because that is a very integral part of these processes is making sure that your housing arrangement is going to be satisfactory for you and that your salary based on your placement where you're actually going to be living is going to be sufficient enough to support your housing and your lifestyle. So just things to keep in mind, not just for these small private contracting firms, but for Jet, for Eikaiwa, and which is actually we're about to touch on. So Eikaiwas, and I mentioned that we have John Loynes coming up in a little bit on an interview. Uh, an Eikaiwa is essentially an English conversation school. It's not your traditional classroom setting. They may have like an office with a whiteboard, or maybe in some settings they may have a classroom setting, but it's much smaller. It's not going to be as robust as 40 students in a classroom. It may only be 6 to 8, maybe less, maybe a 2 to 3 person class. Um, some of the most well-known ones are you have Nova, which is pretty much they offer English Eikaiwa for all ages. And again a corporate Eikaiwa name. That's very. You'll go on a train in Tokyo, you'll see Nova advertisements all over the place. Another one that you'll also see will be Eon. Uh, that's spelled Aeon. Eon. It's very similar to Nova. They offer again classroom setting, not classroom. Sorry, kind of a small classroom setting where it's like 6 to 8 people in a class. You would sign up, and then your hours would tend to be more afternoon to evening. It wouldn't be your traditional like where you're teaching in a school where it would be morning to afternoon. You're catering to people who are attending school during the day or maybe working and then coming to these Eikaiwa schools after their other engagements. So just something to keep in mind. And another one that I was able to kind of stumble across it's called Benesse or Benesse. It's Benesse, and that one is actually an Eikaiwa, but it's exclusively for age ranges of like toddler. So you can have kids that are still counting their ages in months, not years. 9 months, 10 months, through kindergarten, 7, 8 years old. And based on what I was reading about this organization, it seems pretty interesting. I'd never heard of it before, but it's just again, kind of a program outside of like their pre-K or their kindergarten that they go to, where they're exposed to English at a very young age and help them kind of immerse in that kind of speaking environment. So it may be again a handful of kids, and those are not going to be your traditional like language lessons where you're teaching grammar and things like that. That's going to be more playing games and singing songs and doing activities that incorporate those kids getting up and moving around. Because I can speak from experience that those age ranges, they're not going to sit still and listen to grammar points all day. Um, and one other one I've discovered is something called GABA, and it sounds like it's pretty new, but it's a one-on-one Eikaiwa. It's a corporation that you can sign up to be employed with. They pay hourly, so your salary is what you make it. If you go in and work a lot, you can earn a lot. Um, per hour, I think it's like maybe 15 to 2,000 yen per hour, but maybe that could change depending on inflation or demand or however it works. But that, you know, Jennifer, have you heard of any of these before?
Okay, so I've heard of Eon, and that's only because, like, my Facebook, those ads are everywhere,
Yeah,
the sponsored ads. Because I do try to connect with Japan on every level, even concerning like job opportunities and stuff like that. Not for myself, just to look and to see, just be familiar with what's going on in Japan. So I see a lot of ads for Eon. And I mean, everyone kind of knows about it. And kind of it's kind of funny. I don't know if they do this like on purpose. I don't even know the etiquette of this, but they have like this one particular ad that's hysterical. They're like, "Didn't get into Jet? Sign up for Aeon." I'm just like, "What?"
jeez.
Yeah, it's like, really? I'm like, I mean, yeah, they had to have known they did that on purpose. Like, that's so weird and awkward. But anyway.
It's definitely a targeted like they try to prey on folks that
Yeah. Yeah, you could
oh, you
totally
didn't get in on
tell.
chat. Here's your second, here's plan B. And it shouldn't be that way because I mean there are a lot of options out there that are pretty wonderful. Like some of these, I was just reading about them. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Um,
Yeah, the interesting thing I find with the Eikai was is it looks like you have 2 setting options. It's either you're teaching, like, a class in a class setting or this one-on-one that you were talking about, and that's really an interesting concept to think about your teaching style, the way you would teach. Would it cater more to a classroom style, or would you feel more comfortable with this one-on-one kind of interaction? That's really interesting. I'm kind of happy that there's so many options out there.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot to be considered, and we haven't even touched on some of the online opportunities that you can take. Whether that's running your own kind of show, creating and doing advertising on the internet through like YouTube or Skype, Zoom calls that you can teach lessons on Patreon. I've seen a lot of people get really creative, especially during the COVID lockdown and quarantine, where people couldn't go out and meet. They would do these types of things where they would teach English through, you know, online resources. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities there as well. It does require you to have some kind of network to tap into the people that would like to get those classes available to them. And you probably have to put out, and create a brand and all that fun stuff that comes along with teaching online. So
Yeah, a lot of people when they go to Japan, they think, "Oh, I only want to associate with like Japanese people so I can get better in Japanese." But if you go to English teaching, you really want to make those connections with other English teachers because who knows, in the long run, you may find like a business partner where you and someone else could maybe open up your own eikaiwa or like private business to where you can teach English. So you really need to make those connections. I feel like that's really important that people need to really understand when, trying to pursue a profession in English teaching in Japan.
yeah, and that point exactly is going to be highlighted in John's story when you hear it a little bit. It's kind of the same route that he went post jet. So yeah,
I wanted to ask you, we're talking about all these amazing jobs that you can find, but like, How do you find them? That's the question.
So yeah, that's a good question. And the first and easiest answer is Google. But there are some websites that are really good that kind of specifically look to teaching internationally, not specific to Japan, but they provide resources for global, like English education. And obviously, Japan being part of the world, like, you can find sections on there. So one website I know of is called teachaway.com. It's at teachaway.com. They had a lot of good resources on there. That is something that's specific to Japan, but they had a lot of opportunities listed on there, where you can kind of do some research. Another one was goabroad.com. That was it's kind of that's more of a repository of just different websites that you can go to. They had some reviews on there, but one really good one that's specific to Japan is called Gaijin Pod. That's spelled GAIJINPOT.com. And Gaijin Pod kind of acts as your it's kind of like it's like a mixing pot, really, a melting pot of resources for foreigners living in Japan. Whether that's just um, job postings, articles, they have message boards, a lot of different resources. But for the purpose of this episode, we're just going to highlight the section that they have for job listings. Some of those may be, and Jennifer, I know you had mentioned this before when we were talking offline, but some of these websites have things that are catered specifically to folks that are already, in Japan versus sections that are catered explicitly to or specifically to people who are outside of Japan looking to travel in. It sounded like you had some experience, like at least just like kind of sifting through those and are a little bit more familiar with them than I am. So,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, only because I have my blog and a lot of
mhm,
people tend to private message me for like advice. So I feel like I always have to have like my finger on like everything. So like I browse through Gaijin Pod just to see like what jobs like are offering and like what's like on high demand. And the
mhm,
one thing I see about English teaching is, you really need to look at the requirements or like what they're offering you, because a lot of people just look at that, the nice little paycheck number, but you really need to see like what they're really, really offering you, because
yeah,
Hygiene Pot doesn't, they separate it. There's like job listings for people who they want to already have a visa in Japan. So those are for people who are already in Japan, have a job, who may want to just switch jobs. But then they have listings for people who don't have visas, and they're saying, a visa will be provided. So those jobs are perfect for people who, aren't in Japan yet but want to go to Japan. So you really need to look for jobs that pertain to you and don't get confused by the two, because if you're not in Japan yet, you need someone to sponsor you in order to go over there for long term.
yeah, and definitely echo the looking into what's provided by the job, not just for visa's sake, but also for housing, for your insurance, for relocation assistance. Sometimes the flights are covered, sometimes they're not. So you need to know when you're accepting a job whether you're not going to have to drop an extra 1,000. I mean, it may be cheaper now, but $1,000 to get one. I guess it would technically be a one way ticket.
Yeah,
So it
you
may not
you
be a
really need to
thousand, maybe.
see, like, will they be helping you with setting up a place to live? Will they be
Yeah,
helping you set up a bank account? Will they help you with this
yeah,
or that? All these jobs that we talked about previously, they are gonna do different things for you. So don't set your sights on just one job. Really look to see which one works best for you.
yeah. Do your research. Try to find out, because I know a lot of people will post and talk about their experiences with these companies online. Finding those reviews, finding that critique and feedback, because it's critical. Because the people who are posting those are the ones that actually work those jobs. So they're speaking to their own experiences. Maybe it's embellished a little bit here and there, or biased or whatever. But they're speaking from experience. So I would definitely keep that in mind. Um, and also too, keep in mind that this is kind of a motto for JAD, but it's a motto for a lot of other Japanese-based educational programs, is that every situation is different. Just because one person had an experience at one school in one city doesn't mean it's not going to be the same exact thing for you, good or bad.
Truth. Truth.
So just keep that in mind, because a lot of these, while they are firm oriented, you're contracted out to a school, and those schools are run by different boards of education. They have different principals, and your experiences are going to be very different. And just from my experience on JAD, I had 7 elementary schools I rotated around. Each one was very different from the other. So, and how things are handled, the staff, dynamics and things like that. So, just keep that in mind when you are reading reviews, that maybe someone just had a really bad experience, a really bad case of culture shock driving their negative experience, or it was a legit negative experience. But again, just keep that in mind. Lastly, just as another resource that really isn't, you probably won't get all the stuff. You probably find a lot more online than you would here. But the Japanese consulates and embassies in your area, they especially when it comes to JET, you'll have a lot of resources provided from them. But they may have some additional resources about working in Japan. So definitely feel free to reach out and see what they have available as maybe some brochures or packets or whatever, that may provide a little bit more information about some of the, especially with right now Japan's borders are closed to the U.S., so we can't travel over there. So until that opens, there's no real way of getting over there. So, but once those do reopen, your consulates and your embassies will be the first to know. I mean, you can too, probably because of the news and internet, but they'll have the protocols that you'll need to follow. They'll have a better pulse on that than your typical American U.S. News outlets.
Another thing I want to add, which is going to be very odd because I just kind of discovered it myself, honestly. If you're already in Japan and you're looking to switch English teaching jobs, the craziest thing I found out, apparently in Japan, some companies will use Craigslist to put an ad out for a job.
Oh, yeah.
I found that to be so weird. So if that could be another option if you're already in Japan and you're not having any luck. Maybe just like browse through Craigslist in Japan and see what you find. I just heard that recently and I was very surprised to hear that.
Yeah, I'm not too. I'm surprised, but not too. I guess maybe because I always considered kind of Gaijin Pod as a similar. It's kind of like a not official Craigslist. It's kind of the way it's set up. It's similar to some extent. But yeah, that would make sense though, because I know Craigslist is, even here you could find a lot of just odd jobs or things like that. And one thing we didn't even touch on earlier on was just private tutoring is a thing. Like whether it's at college, high school, elementary, people are always looking for a a native speaker or natural English speaker who can help maybe study for a test or prepare for an exam or prepare for a speech contest or something like that. So there is always a market in for those side gigs as well.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's kind of just a preview into other avenues in teaching English in Japan. So now we're going to kind of pivot a little bit into our interview portion of our show, where again we're going to have a somewhat lengthy but very very insightful interview with Brad Trenery and John Loynes. So I hope you enjoy.
All right. Hey, this is Doug, and I am introducing you guys to 2 guests we have today. Not just one, I got 2. I have Brad Trenery and John Loynes. Brad is a high school teacher in Fukushima Prefecture, and John Loynes is an Eikaiwa owner in Iwaki City in Fukushima Prefecture. So we're going to just jump right in, and as you'll hear from their voices, that they're clearly locals to New Orleans. Brad is an Australian and John is from England. And so the first question I really want to ask to both of you is your connection to New Orleans. What is your connection? Have you ever been here? And I already know this answer, but have you?
All right, so I'll be the Australian. Do I have to put my Australian accent on? No, we're good.
Can you turn it off?
Yeah, yeah. Can you tell which one's the Australian, which one's the British good?
I can, but yeah.
All right. New Orleans for me, it started in year 8 music class. We did a jazz unit, and a lot of the jazz unit was New Orleans jazz, particularly Louis Armstrong and the Buddy Bolden, if I remember. And I had never really heard jazz before, like and that was something that was kind of really interesting to me at that point in time, and so that kind of locked into my little memory box there. And I was like, oh, New Orleans sounds pretty cool. And then as I got older and then did the teenage rebellion thing, Nine Inch Nails was a big part of my teenage years, and so they were situated in New Orleans, the Down Spiral and stuff with the recordings. So there was like, oh wow, that's a really cool music thing going on in New Orleans. So that was my connection mainly through the music, and then um, uh, growing up watching the X-Men cartoons, and Gambit came on, and he was so different from everyone else, and he had this really weird accent, and I'm like, what? And then he was like Cajun, and I'm like, what's Cajun? And then again, it was like New Orleans, like, I'm getting all these New Orleans things coming up. I should probably go and see that place, and then get to Japan and meet a young Douglas Tasson, who introduces me to New Orleans food. And now, because of that, I was like,
Which food?
"Oh, etouffee was the first thing he gave me." I remember that because I looked at him and went, "What is this?" And he said, "Try this." And I was like, "Oh my god!" It was nothing like, because I'm from Australia, we don't have anything like that. And I was like blown away. I was like, "What is this? This is right down my nose. It's like spicy and a bit of French cuisine in there." And I was like, "Oh, this is great." And so after that, then of course, you and I became really good friends. And uh, when I eventually got to visit you in New Orleans, I was just, this is my town. I love this place. And I don't know how many times. Is it eight times I've been there now?
It's been a
Yeah.
bunch. It's been a bunch.
Even when you left Japan, I think we saw each other every year since like 2009 up until last year, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, like either me going over there or you coming here, one of the two. Like we always kind of cross paths, so it's kind of neat.
Yeah, and I always loved New Orleans. Always the first time I went when I saw you, and I just, the music and culture. I felt like it was like its own country in America. There's nothing like New Orleans anywhere else, and that was one of the things that really attracted me.
Yeah, you're not the first person to say that. A lot of people come here and they're like, "Wow, it's really a unique place." And I agree.
Yeah, you can kind of go, oh, at urban cities, Chicago, New York, kind of feel the same. LA kind of feels somewhat similar. It's nothing in New Orleans that's similar to anywhere else in America, and that's something that I really enjoy. And then, of course, division rivals in football, Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, I still don't understand. I think was it the color scheme is what drew you in there? I don't know.
No, it was
But
Nature on Means and Kevin Green, R.I.P.
oh, okay.
Because growing up in Australia, my dad watched football, but he just was like a front runner, so he was always watching the teams that won all the time. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'll go for the losers.
Give me a loser.
Yeah.
Give me a loser.
And so I liked Nature on Means when he was at the Steelers and Kevin Green at Packers. And then I was like, well, and then Caroline, I like North Carolina basketball, the college team. So I went, it's blue and black, and I'm an Orlando Magic fan, kind of connected. And then New Orleans are a division rival. God,
It was destiny.
no Super Bowls, no Super Bowls.
One day, maybe not. Anyway, John, how
Mhm.
how about you? What is your connection to New Orleans?
Well, actually, my first awareness of the place was the same as Brad. Actually, is through music. I play the alto saxophone, and all night through high school and into university, played in a soul and blues band. and yeah, just an awareness of the music scene there at first, and then there's a gap until your good self arrived in Japan, and we became friends. And yeah, I was lucky enough to have the chance to visit, and had a fantastic trip. Very brief, but very full weekend.
How many days were you here? You came
I
in on
was,
Thursday or Friday?
I think it was the Thursday evening, and then we were out like on the Sunday. It was like
You were pretty much on a
whoosh.
bender from Thursday until you were on the
He slept
plane.
for like 3 hours for the whole week. He was a
It's about right.
he was
Yeah,
there.
that's
Yeah,
about
mine.
it.
It was a blur for me too, for various reasons. Alcohol was
Yeah,
involved though.
it was a good. I mean, that is a beautiful, welcoming place. It was so good. It was just
you
just so much time.
you
Yeah,
got the
just so
whole
many good times there.
experience.
Yeah,
You had
yeah.
the
I had my beignet sat on the banks of the Mississippi with a guy just riffing on his saxophone down the bank, and the paddle steamer going up the river.
You did the whole.
I was
Yeah, you
like,
did the whole night.
yeah. It was great. Yeah, I wasn't going to waste that morning. We were out the whole night before and enjoying all the amazing live music.
Yeah.
Like just all the bands that were playing. What was that street? It was is it Captain French? No,
Frenchman.
Frenchman. That's it.
Yes.
Frenchman.
Yes.
Yeah, that street was amazing. Just like bouncing between the bars, and you just take your drink with you, and going, whenever one band went on a rest, you could jump into the next one next door, and all the amazing dances. There was one club that had these amazing swing dances, and yeah, it was awesome.
Tourists go to Bourbon. Locals go to Frenchman. That's kind of the
And
that's kind of the
we were
feel.
lucky to have that insider
Yeah.
information. Yeah.
I do remember that. You were like, "Don't go to Bourbon."
Because we walked along Bourbon to get there, and it was just like, oof.
I might have pulled in and got some hurricanes in between walking to Frenchman's.
You had the full spectrum
There was
of
a
smells walking
that
down
was
there.
hard. Yes, yeah. And then I got up and got the morning after smell as well.
Yeah.
We called it a night and saw you in the morning, and you're still awake. We're like, God. I think you're the eldest one out of all of us at that time, and we were just like, we can't keep up anymore.
He's still technically the eldest one out of all of us.
That works like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
nothing has
unfortunately.
changed. I feel
Unfortunately, you
older.
don't catch up.
Yeah, I don't know if I could do that. I couldn't do it.
No,
I was like,
no.
sorry, John. I wish I could keep up.
That weekend was only one notch up from my regular Japanese lifestyle. So it's okay.
Well,
That's true.
now
That's
that
true.
you bring up Japanese lifestyle, how about both of you tell us, about your journey to Japan? Now, whether that's how you got there initially, to what you're doing now. You don't have to give me like the year by year analysis breakdown, but if you can kind of cliff notes and say like what brought you there, what got you interested in the beginning, and then how did you get to where you are today?
I've had a sequence of lucky episodes, shall we say. I got to the end of university and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do yet, and I'd only ever been around Europe up until that point. I'd never gone outside Europe, which whilst all the different countries are pretty unique, there is that still overall European feeling to all of them. And so I wanted to go somewhere that was completely different, and I wanted to live there instead of just travel through and see if that would give a different experience. And so I looked around at the various different options, and the best looking, the best set up, most organized program that was available was the JET program over here in Japan, the Japan Exchange and Teaching program that the government runs. And so I applied, and I made the mistake of being very honest in the interview. And they were like, "So, what's your prior interest in Japan?" And so everyone goes in there thinking, "Oh, I just love Japanese culture, and I've been watching anime and like studying about and studying kanji, and I've been trying to do ikebana. I'm going to classes here." Everyone's doing all that spiel. I go in there and I'm like, "Well, I haven't really ever thought about it before, but it looks really cool." And for my troubles, I got a reserve spot on the JET program. I was not accepted right away.
Oh, so you weren't shortlisted.
Yeah, I got
Yeah.
shortlisted. Luckily, I must have been quite near the top, and somebody, I want to shake their hand, buy them a drink, whatever. Somebody decided not to come, and I was able to come. And it's funny because like all those anime, fans and Japan, lovers have all gone home, and I am still here. So it's funny how that works out.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. That one person literally changed your life.
Oh, completely. Yep. Yep, completely. And I'll never know who it was. But yeah, so we came over and I did 5 years with Jet, which was fantastic here in Iwaki. And the reason I'm still here is because I met my good lady wife. She was in the Board of Education with us. And we wanted to stay here and live here. So as I was finishing up on Jet, I got word through a friend of a friend in the Board of Education that there was a guy looking for an English teacher in a new school, a small school. So I just jumped straight into that, really, just through luckily having that connection there, and worked for him for 5 years. And then I was like, I'm doing all the work and getting about a third of the money. let's remedy that situation. So I bought them out. I bought out the guy. I was working for two different guys, and I bought out their two schools. Just the full kit and caboodle, all the students and all the property and everything, and paid that off, and now it's all mine.
There's no way I could buy. I could not buy a school.
Yeah, like how did that work out? Did you was he looking to move on and like get out of the country or like kind of getting out of Iwaki or
The one there was a Japanese owner. The one guy lived out of town,
Oh,
and he
okay.
didn't want to keep coming across and running the place. So he was looking to sell anyway, and gave me the chance to do that. And then the other place I was working for was like, hey, this is what's happening in the one spot. I want to do it here. I can buy it from you, or I can just leave and see which students want to come with me. And the guy was like, yeah, I'll sell it to you. As the better of the two options, because as the only foreign teacher. So
That's a big deal breaker. English school, yeah.
we got 120 students,
Oh, that's a lot. Yeah.
and of all ages, from like kindergarten right up to adult.
Wow.
And there you go. Yeah, that's me.
Awesome. All right, Brad.
I could barely buy an Xbox after 5 years. 5 years in Japan. It's amazing.
We're gonna pivot from John's lifestyle of having 4 kids and a house to Brad, who owns an Xbox.
Hey,
So-
I have 4 loved ones. I have a PlayStation 3, an Xbox. I got a Switch and an Xbox Series X. They're all
There you
my
go.
kids. There we go.
They're your babies.
Go on, Dish. Which is your favorite?
I'm liking the new one, the baby Series X. I'm enjoying that. And I now have a guitar with 3 pedals.
So you have 5 babies.
So there's love. Yeah, I'm just pumping them out.
So how about you, man? How did you get into Japan, and not into it physically, but into like Japanese culture? What drove you towards changing where you're going in life and going over to Japan?
I just how I get there? It's just funny when I met my first jet. They said, "Oh, are you a jet?" And I didn't know what jet was, and I'm like, "Yeah, of course I came here by jet. What, do you think I swim?" Like, what's jet? Because I didn't know about jet at all. So it was all new to me. So I met my first jet, and I was like, "What do you mean? Am I a jet? Of course I came here by jet." It's interesting, John. Mine's not really that dissimilar. Just a couple of happy events. I guess for me, I was always hell bent on living overseas. Mum's got like my elementary school yearbook where one of my goals was to live in America and live overseas. So that was always one of the things I was really hell bent on. I can't really explain it. It's really hard to explain to people. And so when I was doing university, I was thinking of what kind of jobs I can get, and one of them was teaching, that you can work in different countries being a teacher. So that was part of the reason why I went into education. And so once I graduated, I just started looking for jobs overseas. I was hoping to stay around my home city, but I didn't really want to miss out on an opportunity. At the same time, it was kind of like I had two places I really wanted to go. One was America, and the other was Japan. Um, Japan, I didn't know any Japanese. I didn't know anyone in Japan, so I didn't think I'd get really anywhere with that. And luckily for me, I saw a job posting to work in Japan, and I applied straight away. And I also flubbed the interview pretty bad, actually. Because I was only 22, I hadn't done a lot of job interviews at that point, so I was really nervous. And so I go in there, and the guy's like, "Oh, why do you want to work in or live in Japan?" And I was just like, "Cause I saw the Karate Kid," and and then I said that, and the brain went, "What are you doing? You're in a job interview talking about the Karate Kid too." And then I'm like, "Oh God, I can't believe I said that." So I just kind of blanked for a second, and then he's like, "Okay, um, so besides Tokyo, what else do you know about Japan?" And because I had done history and World War II particularly, I knew of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So my stupid brain, and it's I went, "Oh, I know about Hiroshima and Nagasaki." And so I'm talking in a job interview to some Japanese people about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and then giving them a historical rundown. I'm like, "What are you
I am
doing?"
surprised that you actually like
And
made it through that interview.
oh, when it was finished, I remember talking to one of my friends, and they went, "How'd it go?" I'm like, "There is literally no way I'm getting a call back because I couldn't." Because I was like, I kept bringing up the Karate Kid 2 in Okinawa, and I was just like, oh, so nervous. And I think the reason why was they stated in the interview that they said that you are not going to be in Tokyo, you're not going to be in the urban area. Is that okay with you? And I went, oh God, I'm like 22 with no Japanese. I can't live in a city of 20 million people. That's too much for me. I would love the outback, not the outback, because Japan, but
The
rural
Outback.
Japan is fine by me. Yeah, because I'm from a small city in Australia, and then I was born in a really really tiny place, so the rural didn't really scare me that much. I was happy for it, so that's probably what got me through. Was and they told me later on that I was one of the few that said I'm happy not to go to Tokyo. So yeah, I did think 3 or 4 interviews. I got better at them, I think. And then they gave me 6 weeks and said, "All right, you're going to be in Fukushima in 6 weeks." So I missed out on my college graduation, but it was an opportunity to get a job in Japan and live overseas. So I jumped at it, I guess.
Yeah,
I
that
just got mine. I flew over a week after my graduation.
Yeah, I tried to kind of get it, like, say, can I come a couple of days later because I really wanted to do that for the just to see my mum and dad being happy that I wasn't a complete moron and could graduate from college. But yeah, they really kind of said you need to be here on this date, so unfortunately I missed out. But it was okay. Just a big deer in the headlights for the first year. So and now 15 years later,
yeah.
still
So
here.
are you the same school the whole time?
Ah, yeah, same school the
That's
whole
great.
time. I had two job. I had one where I was doing like a cram school, a juku,
Uh-huh.
that I do after school, and then I did my high school.
So do the teachers rotate in private schools like they do in the public school system? I know in public schools, some depending on how long you've been a teacher for, you may rotate a school after 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, depending, maybe even 6 years. I think, but that's a cap. Usually after 6 years at a school or 5 years at a school, that's the max you could spend there, and then they'll rotate you out to another school as you get more tenure. So with private schools, is it the same?
No, no, we have pretty much stuck to the same staff for the entire time. Like there's teachers that have been there 30 years. We don't rotate. The only times the
Oh,
teachers leave if they decide to go somewhere else or they want to get out of teaching.
okay.
So we mostly have the same staff, which is pretty okay for me because you can kind of form a bit stronger relationships and bonds and having 3 years and they leave and
Yeah,
stuff like
yeah.
that. It's weird. It's weird.
Yeah, I was gonna say it has its pluses and minuses for sure. Getting new teachers in, or some teachers maybe you didn't enjoy teaching with, like they roll out.
Yeah.
So you would get your good with the bad. I mean, I definitely my third year of Jet, and John, you probably can say the same thing about your fifth year of Jet. But like I was the veteran at my school in some cases, where most of the teachers by my last year, there's like one or two that were still there from my first year on Jet. So it was kind of interesting to see that like kind of cycle. It's kind of sad because those teachers they're basically an extended parent to the students, so like they really grow attached to them. Especially I taught elementary school, that's why I guess I'm referring that way. But yeah, yeah. So if you I can, me personally, I can't imagine that kind of rotating routine for teachers when I was growing up. So just seeing kids kind of growing with that, and then knowing that this teacher may not be here in a couple years, and they're perfectly cool with it.
Yeah, I think for my school and situation, I'm still kind of the baby, even though I've been there that long, because we don't rotate. So it's kind of a weird dynamic because only really the newer teachers that started our school are kind of the ones that you feel like are the co-highs, but I still feel like I'm a co-high at the school because some of the teachers have been there 30 years, and it's just insane to me how they've been there that long, just the same job for 30 years in the same place. It's kind of, yeah, it's cool though, because um I learn a lot from them because they've so good at their job. They can say this is what works, this doesn't work, especially being a foreigner, and how Japanese education is and how teaching is done here. I'm bringing my Western ideas, and that doesn't necessarily translate to a Japanese classroom, especially with the students, how the students' behavior is and how they don't want to stick
Yeah.
out and answer questions and raise their hands. That was one of the things where it was so bizarre when I started, because I came from elementary teaching in Australia where I could ask a question and I had them wrestling each other to answer it with their hands. And I have a 40 kids and I ask a question in Japan and none of them just stared blankly and no one wants to say the thing. I'm like, oh,
I'm
okay.
not in Kansas anymore, Toto.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I was actually going to bring up, a typical day in the life. But before I do that, I did have one quick question. I want to circle back to John
Mhm.
about the process of like purchasing the school.
Mhm.
Was it an easy process to transfer the title and the properties and everything from like the original owner to you?
Yeah, I mean, it was just drew up a contract, and it was a payments based thing. It was over a length of time. It wasn't
Okay.
a one off
Okay.
buy, and basically, as long as all your taxes and everything are squared away, then it's fine. Yeah, it's no problem at all.
Okay. Yeah, that was just one thing I wanted to ask you, and then I kind of just forgot to in the moment. So, but while
No
I
worries.
kind of had it in the back of my mind, now we can go back to the typical day in the life. So what is it like for you guys? Just getting up, going to work, and then what is your work day like? How's that schedule? Um, how's that schedule look from the time I mean, you can go from when you wake up to go to sleep, or you can go from just your work day. So who wants to go first?
All right. Typical day. So, for starters, I'm not a morning person, so it's not easy for me, especially in winter, to get up early to go to work. Um, but especially the last few years, we've started doing a program where we are having the kids doing online one-on-one interview, like Skype calls, with people in Philippines, and they've basically given me uh, put me in charge of running that. So we have to do that first period of every day. So I usually like to have first period off so I can kind of wake up a little bit and get everything organized. But now, because of the time and stuff, we have to do that first period. So it's usually the getting to school, doing the staff meeting, and then I'm running around getting microphones, headphones, making sure the server at school's working okay, making sure all the iPads, because we connect via an app on the iPad, and then checking through everything so the interviews can go smoothly for the first period class. And that's first period. And then once that's finished, pack everything up, and then just a normal school day for me, depending on how many classes I have. Usually 4 to 5 per day. Um, I kind of for my junior high school, because I have to teach junior high school as well. I do a lot more work prep for that, because I'm trying to make it as interesting and visually stimulating as possible, because at that age, the development, they can get very easily bored, and you can lose them very quickly if you don't make sure that they're paying attention. So I seem to be doing a lot more prep and making sure like my lessons and what I'm doing are appealing to them, and I'm actually getting them to do a bit more interactive, so that way the kids are enjoying English. Because since I am the foreign teacher there, I want it to feel like it's different than most of the other teachers at the school. So when they have my class, I know it's not going to be the same reading from the textbook, rote learning type of thing. And so something also that they can look forward to, so I can kind of get them in a nice mood, so they want to try and participate. And then when I have my off periods, it's marking or organizing exams, because we have 5 major exams throughout the year, and I have to write them down and make them myself. So it takes a lot of time for that. And if I have any spare time after that, it's probably checking the NBA scores.
No filter. No filter.
That's. I'm just checking the scores. I'm not watching anything.
You're doing research for the basketball club, right? That's all you're doing.
Oh yeah, so I am the basketball coach, so I have to make sure that the Orlando Magic are losing games, and so I can teach my kids not to play like them.
How
So
many kids have you indoctrinated into being Orlando Magic fans?
a
And why are
big
you
fat
setting them up for a lifetime disappointment?
Of
Like,
disappointment.
why?
yeah.
Why would you do that to them? As a Pelicans
most
fans, I can relate.
most of the time I am wearing Orlando gear, so the kids are like, "What is that team? We don't hear about that team." And I'm like, "Yeah, because they don't win much." And they but I'm trying. I'm trying.
This mysterious jersey that they've never seen
Yeah, they're
before.
like a Magic. What is a Magic? I'm like, they're a team that doesn't win a lot, and they don't really try that well either. So
They know how to disappear.
they know how to lose. So like that helps
Magic.
with my horrible coaching. So they know how to
My
lose.
next trick.
Magic. Poor
Do you
Magic.
have any other clubs or activities that you do with the students after school?
We're trying to run a English club for a while. The major problem with that is due to the kids who are most interested and who want to do that club, they have classes until like 6 o'clock. They do period 7, 8, and 9. So they don't actually have any free time after school, because they have more classes, because they're trying to become doctors and rocket scientists and
Uh,
stuff. So it's an accelerated course. And so these kids who are actually really capable of doing that type of English and using English as a conversation thing, they literally can't do it because they have class on. It's kind of a shame, and I
yeah.
wish there was some way we could get them to, because especially with the third graders who are trying to get into medical school, English is a big component of them getting into that university. So they have to have an extremely high level of English.
Yeah.
So it's
I was about
it's
to
one of the things where I kind of go, they should be doing more English with me, because I'm the native speaker, and they have to pass a really difficult English exam and then do an English interview. So I just kind of want them to have more one-on-one time with me, so they can, because that class is, a lot of them are trying to get into those colleges, but it's just so many hours in the class day, in the school day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
shame.
remember someone telling me that like most of the medical school textbooks are in English, or the ones that you have to use
Mm.
at some point during med school. So Yeah, it's kind of a shock that it's not built more into the curriculum for that class, or even pull you in for once in a while to just say,
Yeah,
hey,
I mean, I teach them, but it's only once a week because I have to get spread around all the schools. So I get once or twice a week with some of those kids, and especially when it gets to the end where we have to really get them on their level of English up for the exam or the interview, and it's trying to cram into years of English schoolwork into a couple of months. It just seems a bit difficult and a bit too much for them.
Seems to be a
just gotta,
thing that's like,
yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say, sorry, it's like the quote unquote most prestigious high school in Iwaki as well. They only the foreign ALT teacher only teaches the first grade,
Mm.
and it's like second and third grade don't get
Really?
ALT classes. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I had to fight that when I started, I got put into that, and once I became a bit more capable with my job and understanding like what the students had to do to get into those colleges, I said, "What am I doing here, teaching the first graders once a week for 1 year, and then that's it?" I said that these kids in their third grade, I should be teaching them. I should be having them improve their writing skills, their interview skills, communication skills, because doing first grade for 1 year doesn't is not going to really benefit them in the long term. And so I was able to get my schedule a little bit adjusted, and it kind of meant I had to sacrifice and meant I had to do something more classes per week, but I just felt it was more important that these kids, because some of those interview questions, I would look at them and go, I can't even answer that in English, and this is your second language. Very, very difficult. They really have to have a high level, and I have to kind of get the questions and go, let me check the answer, and give me
Let
10
me get back to
minutes.
you.
Give me 10 minutes. I know.
I do that with work too. I'm like, hey, yeah, let me put that on the parking lot, and I'll circle back with you for.
Yeah, no, I kind of go, this is what you have to do as your second language. Write like a
That's tough.
1,000 word essay on Japan's social issues and how they can change the age care and what they're going to do once the social social systems. And I just look at that, go, what's this 18-year-old, 17-year-old going to know about all this?
That's when they go to John school for additional English prep, right? After the Juku, after the high school ends.
Well, that's why I said that those kids don't get the conversation practice because it just takes off at that level. You know, like the I mean, they're so busy. Like I don't have that many students in that age bracket, but the ones that I do have, they're just just so good, and they're able to have these great conversations, and it's especially the ones that I've had. Because I'm lucky to get that full span of their English education. Like I've seen them, a fair, select few students that I've managed to be able to teach from kindergarten all the way up to the end of high school. It's just incredible to see that growth and to have that first hand front row seats for seeing their abilities just grow and grow, and it's real special.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, that's one of the things being here that long where people go, why have you been here for so long? It's moments like that where you see you have a kid who's 6 years old, and now we've been here 10 plus years. That kid is graduating high school, going to university, and it's an amazing feeling to see how far they've come, and then to see where they're going, and just thinking that is absolutely one of the rare feelings you get from teaching.
Yeah.
And you only can do that if you've been doing it for a long time, like 3 years or
Mhm.
5 years. You don't really get to see that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or if you've got that contact later and you can hear the news later on. My English teacher in I guess what would be the equivalent of like junior high for you guys. We have a moment at the end of high school the last 2 years before going to university, we focused down and we focused on just 3 subjects. And in the exams before that, I kind of did okay across the board. So I could have gone arts, I could have gone sciences, and I went sciences. And my English teacher came up to me. We were playing soccer outside, and my English teacher came up to us and she said, "Oh, boys, did you pick your subjects for the for the sixth form, sixth grade?" And we were like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And she said, "Okay, John, what did you go for?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm doing maths, physics, and chemistry." And she punched me. Not in the face or anything, just on the chest in frustration. And then later on, my mum, who was also a teacher and moved in some of the same circles, met her much later on. And she's like, "Oh, by the way, I think you'd be here. Nice, happy to hear that John's in Japan and running his own English school." and that my teacher was like, "Thankfully, finally, okay, there we go."
He
Had
came
a
around finally.
little deviation, but got back on track. Yeah.
That's awesome.
What is a day in your life like, John? Like for your English school?
A little different at the beginning because I am a family man, as we mentioned before. I've got 4 kids, 14, 12, 7, and 4. And so getting them up and ready and out the door is the main focus. So you kind of get up about 6 usually, just after, and they're off out at 7. The older 3. And then after that, my wife, who's also a teacher, a junior high school teacher, she heads out. Not English, as everyone assumes.
I didn't know. I thought she was an English teacher too.
Yeah, everybody thinks she's an English teacher. No, she's a social studies teacher, and she heads out as well after that. And then it's just me and little Joe, my 4-year-old, hanging out for a bit longer. And then he's off to nursery at 9 o'clock or so. And then day to day is quite different. It depends on the day, but I have there's a high school that I teach at, and there's a couple of other outsourced jobs that I go out and visit a couple of spots in the morning, and then I get some quiet time in the middle, in the lunchtime into the afternoon, and then in the early evening, 4 o'clock, I start getting those elementary students coming after school, and then that just goes up, step by step through the grades, and then into junior high, and then into high school students, and then adults to cap it off at the end. And I finish up teaching at 9 or 10 in the evening.
Yeah, I was about to say your schedule probably is very staggered in terms of when your classes in the actual like English school starts, because of all the kids being obviously in actual like like in their day school.
I have a few adults earlier on as well.
Okay. Does it pick up like in the summer? Do you have a lot of like morning classes, or do you offer extra sessions?
No, it's just the same schedule all the way through.
Same schedule. Okay. That's probably good for you. Just keep it consistent, and then.
Well, this is the thing. Yeah, it's that rhythm, right? It's that getting, like, a lot of people ask me, like, how do you do what you do? Like you guys did when we were in New Orleans. How do you do that? That was a special situation. But like as far as the job goes, like, how do you like have the kids and then run this business and have all these students and have all these classes, teaching like between 7 and 10 hours a day, and it's the momentum of it. It's that rhythm of just it's the same pattern, and the contents of the lessons. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The contents of the lessons and things, it changes it up so it doesn't get boring, but the actual routine of the scheduling of the whole thing, and that just that forward momentum just keeps it going. So when we have like a long break, Japan has like long holidays for New Year and a summer festival called Obon. And when I take like a week off or 5 days off for those holidays, it messes with me something rotten when I try and get back into the rhythm after.
Yeah.
It's like that. Yeah. The first week back is rough.
I could feel that.
you got all these people like in other jobs. It's like, oh, I feel so refreshed after the vacation. Let's get back to it. And I was like, oh god, here we go.
Like when I would come back and visit Japan for those like couple weeks every summer in August, I'd come back home after being there, and I was able to keep up with work for like checking emails every day and making sure things didn't blow up. But coming back and then just shifting back into a full like 40-hour work week right no time off. I had like a weekend, maybe a day or two to recoup, but whew, that first week, man, I'm going on post vacation blues, like not being in Japan blues, like culture shock blues, and then also work blues. So I completely get what you're coming from.
Yeah,
Right. It's a huge factor, that just that
Yeah.
regular rhythm. Yeah.
I used to I book my flight the day before I'd have to start school, so I just would maximize the amount of free time I'd get in on my holiday. And I've started changing that just because one, it like if we get cancelled, I'm screwed. But also, I just need a couple of days to re-climatize to Japan. And I was finding that yeah, that first week, 2 weeks was really difficult because in theory I thought I can just switch off and go straight into work mode and I'll be fine. And it was especially if I used to take the summer off where I'd be in America for like a month and I didn't have to do any work really, and I could wake up whenever and then do whatever and didn't have to really worry about too many responsibilities. And then when you do that for an extended period of time and then you go back into the Japanese work life, which is long hours and whatnot, it really does take a lot out of you. So I've started to give myself a few more days to before starting work just because of that, because I try and avoid those blues. And just yeah, it was yeah, it's really difficult.
Yeah, yeah. So with like the long work days and stuff, you had mentioned that you do a lot of prep for like your Skype calls and your, classes. Your junior high requires a little bit more prep than your senior high. So what kind of like lessons or like what kind of prep do you do for your classes to make them, I guess, more relatable for the kids? You said you wanted to keep it interesting.
Right.
Do you incorporate like pop culture references and like activities that kind of center around that? I know we've talked in the past about, finding like an interesting Marvel clip where they can like highlight a conversation that you can use in the classroom. So some things like that. Like what are things that you do that um, that you find successful in the classroom and how you prepare for that?
It's me or John.
That was for
You
you.
first.
Oh, it's for me. All right.
Yeah.
Uh, okay. Well, it's interesting with this internet uh, revolution, not revolution, I guess, but the way technologies has become such an important, integral part of teaching. When I started in 2005 and 2006, I mean, we had the internet, but it wasn't really used in class and stuff. We're still very much out of textbooks and things. Especially this last 2020 where we're doing online classes, and even right now I've got the next month and a bit of just teaching online. So technology has become a huge part of how I do my lessons, and especially being one of the younger teachers at my school, even in the late 30s. I've found ways to use apps in class. I found ways to I do a lot of photoshopping, so
Oh,
I
I'm
would
familiar with your Photoshop, so yeah.
yes your birthday messages and whatnot, fantasy football. And so I do a lot of photoshopping because I used to do myself and some of the teachers, and then I just started just doing myself. Then I started doing pop culture, famous people, celebrities doing things, just as a way to make it a little bit more relatable for the kids, and then to go, oh look, it's Naomi Osaka in a playing kendo, but she's playing tennis. Why is she holding a kendo stick? And just kind of photoshopping things in situations where like the kids will get a laugh out of what they're looking at, and then bringing that back to whatever grammar point, whatever English rule we're trying to learn, just by making it as visually stimulating as possible. I don't
Yeah.
know a lot of my teachers at my school that do that because they're kind of very happy doing the way they've always done things. But I'm trying to keep on top of that, and especially how you can use technology in things these days. It's amazing what you can do over an iPad. Um, so I do a lot of visual things, which is a lot of looking at for pictures and relatable things, and then also having to edit and making video clips, um, uh, and then making quizzes. And there's a lot of programs now that you can make interactive quizzes, so you can send it out to the kids, and each quiz will be different for them. So you can do that. It's just kind of staying on top of everything while making sure that you're still doing your lessons and your outcomes, and you're reaching it. Just finding different ways of doing that now, and a lot of it is through technology and music and things like that. It's a little difficult because when I got here, I was very much about let's get out of the classroom, let's go outside and do things like that, and that's not how things are done in Japan. So that was a very quick uh, like pivot for me, because I'd say, hey, can I go to the gym and do this? There's this way I want to teach this English lesson, which revolves around like using like volleyball balls and things like that. And they're like, no, you stay in the classroom. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like, can we go outside? It's a lovely day. I think it'd be good for the kids to get outside, get some fresh air. And like, nope, you're not a PE teacher. The PE go outside, you stay in the classroom. So that was
Yeah.
an adjustment I had to make. But after that, yeah, I think most of my prep now is doing that type of things, just fiddling around. And then also, I try and not just use a textbook as my only source of information from the kids, because, again, I feel like that's where a lot of the kids are getting taught that way. And I want to make it
Yeah.
different for me.
Well, I know when I was teaching elementary school, the last year of JET, they had just started pushing fifth and sixth grade English. I was regulated by the government, and they had a government issued textbook for that. My prefecture, Iwaki, or not prefecture, geez, city. Um, oh my god, my Iwaki had a program that I think John, I think you were involved in kind of building that Enjoy English curriculum, correct? Were you involved
The
in that?
elementary program.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
We
So
back when it was when it started, and we were testing it in a couple of case study schools. Hmm.
yeah, and that was something that they pushed out to because I think my year of Jet when I started was the year that they kind of expanded and they kind of blew up from a small number of jets in Iwaki to pretty much in every subsection of the city they would place 3 or 4 jets and those would circle around to elementary schools and this enjoy English curriculum was a loose guideline for us to use. It kind of gave us a conversation or a grammar point to hit on some vocabulary words, but then they had songs and games you could play, but I followed it to the T in the beginning. But after a while, you had the freedom to adapt and do whatever you wanted to get your point across. And once that fifth grade and sixth grade textbook started coming out, it was much more. Oh, we got to start hitting on these. We got to use this textbook. And I was like, I'm only here for like 3 more months, and I know like this is stuff that they've learned when they were in third grade when I started. This is too easy for them. Like I would just kind of say, okay, we can touch on this real quick as a refresher, but we're going to do this other curriculum instead. Because the Enjoy English, I thought it was really progressive compared to what I had heard about like elementary school. Elementary school didn't really have anything, but just things that they were learning. I would show it to a junior high school jet, and they're like, "Man, we're covering that in like second year junior high, and this is being covered by third grade elementary." So there was apparently a noticeable difference as kids started progressing to junior high from when I was doing jet that some of the junior high jets were saying, "Oh, these kids actually are pretty good. Like this stuff is in the textbooks kind of boring. We have to do more to stimulate them." So that I like you said, Brad, it's just really being able to adapt and have that and not just push the textbook. I think is really important. It's good
Yeah,
to hear that you're doing that.
yeah, that's a major thing when I was learning education, and when I was doing it in college. I had a great teacher who told me that you don't just settle on something that worked in class. You can always tweak things, make things better. And if you start going and settling on, oh well, that worked fine, and I'm done, I just can bring that out every year, you're never going to become a great teacher. And so that's another thing that I kind of wanted I do after lessons and things, and make note of things that work, things that didn't quite work, and why they didn't work, so I can change it, tweak it, make it better. And because I don't know, it's like, for me, it's a passion thing, and I don't ever want to lose that passion for teaching. So I want to constantly get better at it. And there are
Yeah.
times where I think, "Oh, this is be fantastic. This is genius," and then it doesn't quite work, and what did I do wrong? And
And sometimes it's just the
yeah.
kids that day, like they just are not receptive. They're in moods. It may be a Monday instead of a Friday or a Wednesday when you taught it
Oh
last
yeah,
time.
yeah.
And so,
Teenagers. Yeah, there's times where I have to go, well, it just was not a good day for that class, and kind of go, all right. But it is a lot of trying new things and not just being happy with settling for what works in the textbook and then just leaving it at that. Because I find that it also makes it interesting for me. If I
yeah.
keep doing the same thing every single year, every single lesson, I would lose interest, and then the kids would see that I'm just going through the motions. And
It's one thing
yeah,
I have to be really careful of in my situation because I'm alone, and I don't have peers to
Right.
compare my classes to, and other teachers with different ideas, and it is, I think, very dangerous to get into a rut, and into just the regular thing. Um,
mm,
but my mantra is this basically: every given opportunity, just take a step back, look at what you're doing, and decide: are you teaching the textbook as opposed to just doing the textbook?
mm, yeah,
Because it's very easy just to run through the activities that are given and what's right there on the page, as opposed to actually coming up with ideas and activities that will teach that content.
yeah.
Well,
Self
there's
assessment is big, 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 big.
Yeah. Well, that's a big thing for you, John, because when you teach, they're paying you to teach, as
Yeah.
opposed to like you're not at a school where they have to go. Like
Hmm.
they're voluntarily coming
Mm,
to your classroom, so you have to keep it engaged, right? You have to keep it in to
It's an interesting.
not constantly like recreating the wheel, but you know keeping them wanting to come back.
Yeah, it's a very interesting balancing act between the kids having a good time and enjoying themselves, and it being an effective enough education to make the parents happy that they've made the right choice.
yeah, I've noticed that with some of the other teachers and stuff that they've done stuff and showed me what they did in class, and I kind of went, well, "Where's the English in this?" Yeah, they had fun, and oh, it's great, but I don't see any English going on here. They're like, "Oh, it's just a game." I don't know. I'm like, but what's the English rules you're learning here? You're just having them play a game without any context. And they're like, "Oh, it works," and they had fun, so that's my job done. And
That
that's
that
yeah.
that, that reminds me of a time I forget who put me in touch with this person, but there was a family in Iwaki that had a daughter who was about to go to a ballet camp in the U.S. and they wanted her to learn English. And so they were looking for a tutor that would come over after school and kind of help her learn, learn English, learn some phrases to help get by. And so someone put me in touch with them. And honestly, I was like, man, I don't know what to teach this kid. Like, they're like, oh yeah, just teach her, English. And I'm like, okay, let me just teach you English. So I mean,
I
I
was.
thought of like this, yeah,
Let me guess. This was like a very short amount of time before they actually left, right?
yeah, it was like a
Yeah.
month
So,
2 days,
before.
yeah. Right.
I, I
days.
did two I did two sessions and I pretty much like they just didn't bring me back after that because I guess I don't know if the kid wasn't getting anything out of it or it was it was just so close to the actual time of the departure for the kid that they were like okay that was enough but yeah it was tough I was like all right let me look up some ballet terms I guess like spin turn stand on your toes like things of like I didn't really know what kind of context it needed to be in so being able to relate to your kids and deliver not just for the kid because like you said it's a balancing act like their parents had a very specific but yet not specific at all expectation of these like tutoring sessions where it's like we just want her to learn English but we don't care what we just want you to teach her English and it's like that gives me no direction so
Right.
Mm.
if you're able to provide that direction and again with the actual classroom setting and having it be like weekly, or do they come like twice a week or once a week, John, or how often do
My
your students
students are all
frequent?
once a week.
So yeah, you have that kind of, like you said, a routine and a schedule
Hmm.
that they could
Hmm.
follow. But yeah, I always look back at that and I was like, man, that was such a weird like
I think they wanted
it
you to wear a
seems
tutu and go. That's where
I
you
should
failed.
have.
You should have worn the tutu. Would have worked.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the hard thing too is
You're
that the kid was, like 10 years old, really shy, so really quiet. So getting her just to open up a little bit to speak and to like, engage in conversation or try was that took like a whole session just to get through and kind of break that ice. So
That's a key component of how English education is viewed in Japan is get the kids, hey, get them to learn English, but not giving us directions. What exactly do you want them to do? Just learn English. What does that mean? So it's difficult.
I mean, you made a good point there, Doug. It's it's so much more than vocabulary and grammar. It's that confidence and that enthusiasm for the subject, and the whole thing as a package is what they need. They need that drive. They need that because picking up a language when you're not in that country is really hard. EFL is English as a foreign language is really tough, and they need that driving force. Yeah.
So John, do you have any like unique materials or like something that you use to differentiate your school or your product from other Eikaiwas that may be floating around out there in
Where's
Iwaki?
a tutu for ballet lessons? Yeah.
I think as far as like materials go, not so much because there is a lot of like very well developed, very well thought out and designed courses. And again, having that backbone to build on and that structure to use makes my life easier, and makes the job more doable. But I would say the biggest thing that my school offers over other places is my connection to other teachers, like you guys when you were here, and in town, Doug, and having connections with the teachers, and then I create events. We have big events for each of the different levels, elementary kids, the junior high school kids, and then the adults, where we have a bunch of teachers that they've never met before, and native speakers, some of who don't have much Japanese at all, and then we create a framework, a structure of events and daily activities throughout a day that they can just use the English for real, yeah, the actual raw first contact, like face to face, with foreigners and communicating and spending time with foreigners, um, and just having a lot of friends over here and a lot of contacts makes that a really good experience for them. Um, for the junior high and high school students, we go down to Disney resorts down in Tokyo, which is always a fantastic trip, and just
I went on one of those trips too. I remember
oh
that.
yeah, yeah, it's a good time. It's a good time, and it's become more and more popular. The one, unfortunately, last year we couldn't do it, with everything that was happening. But the
I
last
was
one we
noticing
did.
that. Yeah.
Say again, sorry.
No, I was noticing like they were getting bigger and
Yeah,
bigger because you were posting it out.
yeah,
I was like, wow, they are really becoming popular.
yeah. The last one we did before everything kicked off last year was there were 30 students, junior high school and high school students, and 24 teachers. So it was almost 1-to-1, which is just crazy, and but just such a good experience for the kids.
I think the application of English is something that is very key for us
Hmm.
as
Yeah.
native speakers.
Yeah, that
Um,
practical. Yeah.
yeah, it's one thing to learn to memorize how to take bus number 3 to City Hall, but when someone says, "Hey, you need to take bus number 5 to the convenience store," and they don't have any idea what you're saying, it's because they've memorized that sentence, bus number 3 to City Hall. But once you switch out verbs and nouns, they start going, I have no idea what's going on. And by having
Yeah.
this native speakers, they can see a conversation, how it works, and seeing patterns, and then being able to adjust to that on the fly without going, we can only talk about this one thing that we did in class.
It's like that Simpsons thing, isn't it? Is that the guy that doesn't
Yeah.
speak English? He's like, sorry, I don't speak English. He's like, oh, you're doing really well. He's like, oh no, I only say that line and then this explanation of that. And then he says something else. He's like, okay.
Plug and play vocabulary.
Because a big part of what I do with elementary and into junior high is teaching that flexibility and giving them the patterns to use. Because that was a huge thing for me in Japanese, finding those patterns, finding those those rules that I could apply to different sets of vocabulary, as opposed to situational. Like this is shopping English, this is train station English. That is not a good way to do it. Having the patterns and then showing them, hey, we are practicing shopping today, and we're talking about shopping today, or talking about hobbies today, or whatever. But look at the pattern. That is exactly the same pattern as we were doing the other day, and you can just switch them out, and get them to create as much original content, as much original ideas and their own. I love. I let them just write, as long as this grammar is correct and it's the pattern that I've asked them to do. I let them do anything in their notebooks when they're at home, and some of the stuff they come up with is quite imaginative, shall we say.
That actually brings me back to our last question, and I want to be respectful of your time. I know it's already almost 2:30 in the morning, and that sounds funny saying I want to be respectful of your time interviewing at 2:30.
I'm 3 Red Bulls deep. I'm ready to go till 6 a.m. now.
Tomorrow's a holiday, right? You're good.
Yeah. I'm gonna go play Xbox.
So you were just talking about like write whatever you want. I don't care what the mistakes you make. Just get something out there. Making mistakes is like really an integral part of learning languages. Like I make mistakes all the time when I talk in Japanese. I make mistakes in English all the time. They may not be as funny as my mistakes in Japanese, but everyone likes to, hearing a good like mistake story. So do you have like what's your most favorite story or most memorable example of like maybe an unintentional or unironic something that a student maybe wrote or said that just made you laugh, like on the spot, like chuckle out loud, and you had to control yourself, like recollect yourself, because they weren't trying to make you laugh. It was just something that they said. So do you have an example of that off the top of your head? Not to put you on the spot, but just something like that out there. And John, you can go first if you want, since you were kind of talking about this already.
Well, as I'm teaching that kind of elementary level, one thing that stands out and comes up every time is when they're starting to learn, I like, do you like, and talking about things that they like. And one of the themes that we practice with that is animals. And just letting them figure out and making sure they figure out that it's very important to pluralize the animal. And when you're talking about it, because you're not talking about eating them, you're talking about liking them as an animal. So it's like when you drop off the S, it becomes the meat of the animal, right? So, so there's all these kids going around saying, "Yeah, I like cat." I was like, "Oh, do you really? Okay, I've heard of katsukari, but I didn't realize what it was." And yeah, just like showing them that if you say, "I like dog," and "I like cat," "I like hamster," it's like you're not talking about pets anymore. You're talking about a very imaginative menu on a restaurant. And so yeah. That's so, and like just their faces when you actually explain what they're saying.
You're like, oh no, I would never eat that.
That's always fun.
Oh man. Well, mine is not the kids; it's me. Shockingly enough. So as I said when I started, I didn't know any Japanese when I started, and they threw me in like the deep end straight away. Like they just put me in front of 40 kids, and I went, uh-oh. And so I use a lot of gestures and whatnot. So obviously when you start, you do introduction lessons. So you talk about yourself, your country and stuff. So I was talking about Australia. Now, in Japanese, population is jinko, right?
Oh, God.
Yeah, right?
I'm nervous. I don't know about Doug, but I'm quite nervous.
Yeah. So there's a slight. If you have a slight speech impediment like me, it might sound like chinko, which means something else. which
which
is
means
a Japanese slang word for the male anatomy. Some might say.
Richard.
So, yes, Richard. That whole Austin Powers scene at the end. Johnson. So combine that with my lack of Japanese, my ability, like a lot of miming, a lot of gestures. So I go to class, and I put jokes in my introduction just to make it a bit light. And I'm getting cricket noises. The kids are just, because once again it's a new language, they're not getting my jokes. And then I keep bringing up population of Australia. So I go, Australia's population, like our chinko, and the kids will kind of giggle, and then I go, but it's really small, with a small gesture. Somebody going, oh, it's a small population, really small. And then I go, but Japanese population is huge. It's so big, with a big gesture. And the kids are cackling. They're laughing their asses off. And I'm sitting there going, I mean, I know I'm funny, but this isn't one of the jokes. What is happening here? And so,
Wasn't that the opposite way around on South Park?
yeah. Yeah, so I started doing that, and then it got to a point where, like, 3 days later, I'm like, well, I have to pause for the population joke, because apparently that kills. So I started doing it, and then the population thing would come in. I'd go, oh, Australia's so small, Japan's so big. And and again, I get everyone pissing themselves laughing. And then the next day, after like 3 or 4 days of that, my vice principal runs over to my desk and calls the head teacher, who was my translator at the time, because I didn't know any Japanese. And he's yelling at her, and she comes over, and then she's like, oh, the principal needs to see you in his office now. And I'm like, uh-oh, what did I do? So I'm like, I'm going through my head going, no, I haven't done anything. And he goes in there. He's staring a black hole into me when I walk into his office. He's not happy. And my English teacher, the head English teacher, was this 60-year-old lady, very, very sweet. She's like my Japanese mother. And so he starts saying in Japanese to my teacher what was happening. And then my teacher's like, what? And she's like, oh my God. And I'm like, what? What have I done? What? And she goes, the principal said you were talking about size of dicks in Australia and Japan. And I'm like, what? Why would, no, I'm not. What? No. And then I'm like, what? No, what, where is that coming from? I couldn't work it out. And then I went, oh, well, they kept laughing at the population thing. So I'm like, population, jinko, like, and then the principal starts laughing because he sees what I'm doing, like what happened. And then she's like, oh, and she goes, Bradley, population is jinko. You're saying something else. I'm like, what am I saying? She's saying, you're saying, like dicks. Like, she even said dicks, which was really funny. Seeing 60-year-old Japanese lady saying dicks was pretty funny.
That's funny.
For sure, the podcast listener is going to be. So I guess Bradley didn't have a story as it gets
Yeah,
edited out.
this is now. Bradley didn't have any stories.
No,
that's
great.
Yeah. So there's.
Come on, give Doug the line so they can smoothly edit it in. Oh no, nothing's really.
Yeah, no, I have no stories to tell. I did everything great.
My cleaner version of that is I always mixed up Rekshi and Rikshi. So I was trying to talk about history, and I'm talking about sumo wrestlers.
I really wish that, because you don't want to be in your first week of school getting called to the principal's office with him pissed off and
about
yelling.
Penises. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when you don't know what you've done wrong. And yeah. I'm sitting like, I knew that I'd done something wrong. And in my first week, first job, full-time job, and I'm like, what have I done? I've just introduced myself. And he had a sense of humor, thankfully. And then he told me, please don't do that anymore. I'm like, don't worry, we'll cut that population part.
Noted.
Yeah.
No more population jokes.
Yeah, I'll just write it on the board or something. We'll just
edited out of the self intro like it's edited out of the podcast.
Like, they don't really need to know that Tokyo and Australia is pretty much the same population. So
that's funny.
That's probably my biggest guff. of
No,
the many cuts.
that's
Yeah.
amazing. But yeah, so that was, I love that story. I'm gonna remember that, and I might actually intentionally drop that joke when I'm talking to people as an icebreaker. So maybe not like, hey, my buddy told me this joke, but actually accidentally say like talking about Jinko, but meaning and then saying Jinko.
Make
I
sure you
might
put
actually do that.
gestures because I was
Yeah,
really big into gestures. So
gestures are
like
good. Gestures have to happen.
Tokyo's population is so big, so big.
All right. Well, that's gonna kind of wrap up everything. We're gonna close it out on the wiener
Oh,
jokes.
the dick joke. The dick joke. I mean, you told me this would happen.
This is what everyone's waiting for. We're saving this is the big finale. But yeah, no, I wanted to thank both of you for staying up late and being a part of this. Again, really appreciate it. It's been a blast talking and reminiscing and learning a little bit more about you. I knew a bunch of stuff about you guys already, but some of this I didn't, so it's good to hear. But yeah, so thanks again.
I apologize if you lose listeners after this.
Oh, we might gain listeners. I think having different accents on the show, it makes us more worldly, right?
Yeah,
So.
the internet has an audience for everything.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's gonna be it today for this recording. Thank you again, Brad and John, for your contributions and for your stories. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, it's good to see. I remember meeting John in my third year here. Lovely, lovely bloke.
Likewise. Yeah, it's been good to catch up.
Getting to know John over the years and still here. And then watching John get more kids and I get more video game systems.
Kids.
All right. Well, that's it, guys. Until next time, have a great one.
All right, cool.
And that's a wrap for this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Krewe of Japan podcast. In today's episode, we explored teaching English in Japan through non-JET program opportunities. I want to again thank John Loynes and Bradley Trenery for joining us to discuss their Japan journey and teaching experiences. It was incredibly insightful and provided us a glimpse into the day in their respective lives. Are you considering ESL education as a possible means of getting yourself into Japan? Or perhaps you already walked in those shoes as an English instructor over there? Or maybe you just have ideas for episodes, feedback, comments, or questions. Share those thoughts with the crew at Krewe of Japan Podcast. That's KREWEOFJAPAN podcast @gmail.com or on social media. While you're there, subscribe and let us know how you're enjoying the podcast. And check out our other content as well. We cannot wait to hear from you and look forward to seeing what you have to say. Until next time, see ya.